Tonight, Russia ramping up its aerial assault on Ukraine. Deadly airstrikes across the country, one hitting near a kindergarten. Airports targeted near Ukraine's border with Poland. Ukrainian troops trying to defend Kyiv, but new satellite images show Russian forces may be surrounding the capital city. Ukraine's president, however, says he believes the country is moving towards victory. President Biden with a warning for Vladimir Putin, saying Russia will pay a, quote, severe price if chemical weapons are used in Ukraine. The U.S. accusing Moscow of setting up a pretext to deploy them. President Biden also moving forward with new sanctions that would raise tariffs on Russian products and ban Russian imports, including vodka and diamonds. Putin's reaction as he met with the president of Belarus. Storm takes aim. More than 62 million Americans under alert for snow, rain, and ice. Treacherous conditions causing dozens of crashes in the southern plains. The system now marching east. Al Roker is here with the timing and track. Tragedy on spring break. Several West Point cadets overdosing after coming in contact with fentanyl-laced cocaine while on vacation in Florida. And authorities say some of them may have overdosed just from giving CPR to their friends. Plus, the shocking robbery caught on a home security camera. A woman held at gunpoint after opening her front door for a man posing as a candy vendor. And the man stealing a 60-foot yacht and going for a joyride before crashing into several other luxury boats. The multi-million-dollar bail he's facing. Top story starts right now. Good evening. I'm Gabe Gutierrez in for Tom. We close out another week on Top Story as the war in Ukraine intensifies. Tonight, Russia widening its aerial assault. Airstrikes in the central city of Dnipro, killing several people and hitting near a kindergarten. President Zelensky today accusing Russia of targeting healthcare centers for women and children. Airports near the Ukrainian-Polish border also bombed. Ukraine's Ministry of Defense releasing new video appearing to show them taking out Russian forces en route to Kyiv. But new satellite images suggest Russia may be changing its plan of attack to take the capital. The Biden administration also warning Russia has accused the U.S. and Ukraine of preparing to use chemical weapons as a pretext for Moscow to deploy them. President Biden today saying Putin will pay a, quote, severe price if that happens. Still, against all odds, President Zelensky today appearing optimistic that his country could still win this war. Let's get right to Richard Engel in Ukraine, leading us off again tonight.
Russian forces are expanding their assault on Ukraine, striking the central city of Dnipro for the first time. Nothing seems to be off limits. Ukrainian officials say this was a home for the elderly and disabled, hit by a Russian bomb in Kharkiv. All of the residents were in a shelter and survived. Further south in the besieged city of Mariupol, Russian forces have cut the city off. No food or water. Local officials describing it as Armageddon and say 1,500 people have died because of the blockade.
No way out, any way out. Russian troops do not allow even for humanitarian help.
Though one sliver of good news, the pregnant woman seen in the aftermath of that strike on the city's maternity hospital, she gave birth to a baby girl and named her Veronica. Tonight, there are signs Russia's momentum is slowing. At a meeting with his defense council, Russian President Vladimir Putin gave the green light for mercenaries from the Middle East, mostly from allied Syria, to bolster Russian ranks, which have been taking heavy losses. The Ukrainian military put out this drone video, it says, of a Russian tank column outside of Kyiv lured into an ambush. But Russia still has 90% of its forces intact. Though a senior U.S. military official says that 40-mile Russian convoy is stalled 9 miles outside the capital. The vehicles now hiding under trees to protect them from Ukrainian attack. In Kyiv tonight, volunteers are preparing to defend the capital in a basement gun range. Miro Popovich, who we met last week, is Ukrainian-born, served in the U.S. military in Afghanistan, and became an American citizen.
When Russians are pushing the city, the military, the official military, they take the first hit, and then groups like ours We are here to help them in whatever they need.
So is it going to be like a guerrilla war, like hit and run tactics?
Yes, exactly.
Popping out of...
Absolutely right. I'm pretty sure, even if I'm saying it right now, Russian military, they are not prepared for us, for militarized civilian resistance.
And you guys are just going to pop out and
pop
shoot
up
them?
from every single hole. And bam, 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 bam. We're going to give them like hell.
Gabe, this is a fortified city. The mayor said they have enough supplies now for about 2 weeks, but supply lines are still open, so it's possible to bring more food and more weapons in. There are about 2 million people, according to the mayor, remaining here. Normally there are 3.5 million people here. So with all the people and all the weapons, if Putin wants to take Kyiv, he may have to blow it up, but he might be willing to do that. Gabe?
Richard Engel in Kyiv. Richard, thank you. As the conflict in Ukraine rages, the U.S. is also in a brutal information war with Russia. The White House fighting false flag claims, warning against the use of chemical weapons, and planning to turn the economic heat up even more. Here's Peter Alexander.
President Biden tonight delivering this blunt warning to Vladimir Putin.
Russia would pay a severe price if they use chemical weapons.
At a heated UN Security Council meeting, Russia accused the U.S. and Ukraine of preparing to use chemical and biological weapons. What the U.S. is blasting as lies, a false Russian pretext to justify a potential chemical attack.
I will say this once. Ukraine does not have a biological weapons program.
It comes as the president is trying to further squeeze the Russian economy, saying the U.S. would join allies in ending normal trade relations with Moscow. That, once approved by Congress, would allow the U.S. to raise tariffs on Russian products.
Putin is an aggressor. He is the aggressor, and Putin must pay the price.
President Biden's new sanctions also banned several Russian imports, including caviar, vodka, and diamonds. Though Putin today, hosting Belarus's president, brushed off the escalating sanctions, saying the Soviet Union constantly lived with them. But more than 40 Senate Republicans argue President Biden is not going far enough, demanding he assist in the transfer of Poland's fighter jets that Ukraine's president desperately wants.
We've gone from incompetent by the Biden administration to this move is dishonorable.
The Pentagon and White House have ruled that out.
The idea that we're going to send in offensive equipment and have planes and tanks and trains, that's called World War III.
And Peter Alexander joins us now from the White House. So, Peter, how soon can Ukraine expect more financial aid from the U.S.?
Yeah, as soon as next week, the president's going to sign a $1.5 trillion bipartisan spending bill with nearly $14 billion in emergency aid for Ukraine to help refugees there and to restock that country with more badly needed military equipment, likely to include anti-tank and anti-aircraft weapons. Gabe?
Peter, thank you. For some more analysis on the crisis in Ukraine, we want to bring in Vice President for Russia and Europe at the United States Institute of Peace and former ambassador to Ukraine, Bill Taylor. He, of course, is a familiar face to Top Story viewers. Ambassador, thanks so much for joining us again. Now, Putin suggested this morning there had been some, quote, positive shifts in Russia's talks with Ukraine. Have you seen any evidence of that, or is this just more stalling and gamesmanship?
Gabe, no. I saw those remarks and checked with my Ukrainian colleagues, some of whom are in very senior positions and able to know exactly if that, and they said no, there's nothing there. We know that the Ukrainians are open for conversations, for dialogue, for negotiations. They've been serious about these. We saw the Ukrainian foreign minister, Minister Kuleba, went to Turkey and had sat down with Foreign Minister Lavrov from Russia. And Lavrov was there to listen. He was not there to negotiate, not there to offer anything. So that came to nothing. We know that there also have been conversations, negotiations on the border between Belarus and Ukraine. And again, the Ukrainians are very serious. They've sent senior people, very senior people, close to President Zelensky. And the Russians have sent a former Minister of Culture. So it's not clear at all, Gabe, that the Russians are serious about these negotiations.
And Ambassador, today, President Biden announced the U.S. and its allies from the G7 will take steps to deny the most favored nation status to Russia, which further squeezes Russia's money supply. But are we at the point now where the United States has just exhausted the sanction option?
So, okay, the sanctions are cumulative. They build up. They get stronger and more effective and more damaging, more expensive for Russians over time. And every time there's a new layer that was just like today, when they put on more people, on more products, on more capability, that further damages the Russian economy. And the Russian people know it. You're showing that the exchange rate used to be, Gabe, it used to be 1 ruble, $1. Now it's 1 ruble, $1, 200 rubles. So this is, it's just fallen off the table.
Yeah, but Ambassador, those sanctions might hurt the Russian people, but at what point will it affect Vladimir Putin? At what point does he feel squeezed by it?
Vladimir Putin does have to worry about the stability of his regime. He's got two bad things going against him. One is, we've already talked about, and that is the economy that is affecting every Russian family. He's also got an increased number of Russian soldiers who are going back to their villages and towns for burial. They are being killed in large numbers in Ukraine. The Russian people have no problem. They have no argument with the Ukrainians. They have good feelings about Ukrainians, and their sons and daughters and fathers and brothers are being killed in Ukraine for reasons they have not been explained. President Putin's been looking for some kind of answer, some kind of justification. These false flags, maybe the Ukrainians are going to attack them with chemical weapons or by. No, he doesn't have anything to say to them. So he's got a problem on his hands from the ground up. He's probably, Gabe, got a problem within the Kremlin.
Ambassador Taylor, thanks so much for joining us again. As the Russian forces continue to surround Ukrainian cities, thousands of Ukrainians, including many children, are struggling to get out of the war zone. Tonight, Molly Hunter takes us inside a hospital in Lviv that some of the sickest children have reached.
We meet 7-year-old Sofia 4 days after she was ripped away from her home near Kyiv, and her nurse, Dubrovina, has been by her side for the last 2 years. With her lollipop, she's receiving dialysis, awaiting a kidney transplant. It took Dubrovina 24 hours to bring Sofia and 14 other very sick children by train from Kyiv to Lviv. And that's Bunny Kuzo, who also traveled from Kyiv. The Western Ukrainian Specialized Children's Medical Center is overrun. It is the triage hub for the country. Dr. Olena Kozlova runs their pediatric oncology ward. Learning your child has cancer is the worst day of a mother's life, Dr. Kozlova explains.
But at this situation, when they must leave her town.
But having a child with cancer amid a cruel war is a hell no one should have to endure. Single mom Ina's 8-year-old son Danny Lou was diagnosed with blood cancer on February 5th. Then the war started. 3 days ago, they fled the besieged city of Kharkiv in an ambulance.
Bombs. Everything. It was full-scale war. Everything was bombed. We were living in the basement all the time.
What does it feel like as a mother just to have all of this out of your control?
I have to be strong, she says. I'll do whatever it takes to get him the treatment he needs. But the logistics are complicated. Dr. Kozlova and her team, staying in Lviv, are partnering with St. Jude Children's Hospital to get children safely out of the country.
For our Ukraine, we cannot go to abroad. We must stay here.
For Ukraine and for brave little children like Sofia, who won't stop fighting either.
Now, Gabe, as I mentioned, the logistics are just incredibly complicated to, of course, evacuate them from the east, get them to the safety of Lviv, and then get them out of the country and further afield into Europe. Now, there is some good news tonight. Ina, that mother from Kharkiv, her 8-year-old son is stable enough to travel. So we've just learned they are scheduled to be on an evacuation convoy leaving tomorrow morning. Gabe?
That is so great to hear. Molly Hunter, thank you. In western Ukraine, mourners gathered for a final farewell for 3 of Lviv's fallen soldiers. One of their young sons telling our team he is ready to fight and to carry on his father's legacy. Another devastated mother describing her final conversation with her only son. NBC's Matt Bradley was there and has their stories.
After 2 weeks of war, Ukraine is burying its dead. The number of slain soldiers is unknown so far, but today the city of Lviv buried 3 of them. 39-year-old senior soldier Andrei Stefanishin, 58-year-old Sergeant Dmitro Kabakov, and Senior Lieutenant Taras Duduk, who was only 25 and close to marrying his girlfriend Tatiana. These men were killed in the early days of fighting in the southern city of Kherson. Relatives told us the Russians held their remains for nearly 2 weeks, releasing them only days ago. Andrei Stefanishin's son Vitaly is just a few months shy of fighting age.
Once you turn 18, you're planning to pick up a gun.
He says he is. A decision he says he made on his own.
Many of the soldiers buried here were killed in 2014, the last time Russia invaded. Now, Ukrainians are having to dig fresh graves.
Maria's only son is among the dead. She's a widow.
What was the last thing you said to your son?
He said to me, "Mother, maybe this is our last conversation." They were his last words. I was shocked. I said, "You are my only one. Please take care of yourself. I don't have anyone else."
Having sacrificed so much, many here expect more from the West.
What do you have to say to the American people?
Please, just help us to close the sky. Our children are dying in this war.
It's been said that only the dead have seen the end of war, but for Ukraine's living, this latest war is only beginning.
And Matt Bradley joins us now from Lviv. Matt, it is so heartbreaking to watch as these families grieve their loved ones, but sadly, so many others may never get that chance.
That's right. I mean, and these families were almost like that. You know, it took them 2 weeks, nearly 2 weeks, to get the bodies, the remains, back from the battlefields in Kherson where they died in the opening days of this fighting. And it took the intervention of the Red Cross to get them back from the Russians. And now in certain other places like Mariupol, we're seeing devastation and the beginnings, some sightings of mass graves. Gabe?
Matt Bradley in Ukraine. Matt, thank you. Tonight, Ukrainian refugees are arriving at the U.S.-Mexico border, and some are being turned away. COVID policies and packed ports of entry are making the process nearly impossible. NBC's Guad Venegas is in Mexico with more.
They carry Ukrainian passports, but no visas to enter the U.S.
I don't have any other place to go.
Sofia and her 3 children left 3 days after the bombings began, driving across Romania before flying here to the U.S.-Mexico border.
I have family and friends in USA, and they're ready to support me.
Sofia was denied entry twice, and she's not alone.
This group, including 9 Ukrainians, was turned away yesterday and again today by Border Patrol officers. Now, like many others, they're confused and have no idea what they'll be doing next.
We're going to welcome Ukrainian refugees with open arms.
Despite the president's remarks today, the U.S. border is still officially closed to asylum seekers due to a 2020 COVID policy.
Right now, there's nothing we can do, sir.
Any exemptions are made on a case-by-case basis.
Oh, we've been trying to ask those guys on the border control, to help us with that case.
Alex's family fled after their home was shelled. Today, they were turned away.
Right now, we have a trickle that's turning into a stream that's going to turn into a flood.
On her 3rd attempt, a lawyer spotted Sofia and helped her enter the U.S. where her case would be reviewed. Others hoping they'll be next as the war back home rages on and more families join the line.
And Guad Venegas joins us now from the U.S.-Mexico border. Guad, is there any way for these Ukrainian refugees to get into this country with President Biden's welcoming words? You mentioned those COVID restrictions. What options do they have?
Right, Gabe. So the current immigration policy that was put in place during the pandemic keeps anyone from going to the port of entry and asking for asylum. Now, exceptions are made, as we showed in the reporting. So to end this, they would have to end what they call this Title 42, right? And that would allow all people coming from all countries to ask for asylum here, or they could make an exception for the Ukrainians, but then they would face harsh criticism because they didn't do the same for people from countries like Central America who also came here fleeing the violence. Gabe?
Guad, thank you. We turn now to the forecast. While some parts of the country are seeing warmer temperatures today, winter isn't over yet. Nearly 60 million people are under alert as a massive winter storm moves east. That system already turning deadly in Tulsa, Oklahoma, creating treacherous driving conditions. Emergency officials responding to almost 30 accidents this morning, at least one fatal. Al Roker is tracking it all for us. Al, what are we looking at?
Well, Gabe, here's the interesting thing. I'm in Austin, Texas right now. Yesterday, it was 76 degrees. Today,
We got wind chills of 32 degrees and wind gusts of over 30 miles per hour. And this is just the back end of a 2,000-mile-long system that extends all the way into the Northeast. As we go to the maps, 130 million people under winter weather advisories, warnings, flood watches, and wind advisories. And into the southeast, we have severe weather alerts. We've got our severe risk to an enhanced risk of dangerous weather. 17 million people, wind gusts of 75 miles per hour. What we're most worried about, nocturnal tornadoes. They are twice as deadly as the daytime variety. As we put the radar on top, you can see strong storms firing across northern Florida along the southeast coast. To the north of that, snow stretching from Fort Smith up into Cincinnati and beyond. So here's what we're tracking. As this system develops, we expect it to become a bomb cyclone. In other words, a bomb cyclone would have to drop 24 millibars in 24 hours. This one is going to intensify 80 millibars in 48 hours. Rain, wind, heavy snow battering the east as that low intensifies. And then as we move on into Saturday, snowy, blustery conditions for New England. We're going to be looking at strong, gusty winds throughout the Northeast. Airport delays are going to be a problem. Road conditions are going to be rough, from snow to rain to winds that are battering high-profile vehicles. We're talking about upwards of 12 inches of snow interior New York into northern New England. And as we move to the south, heavy rain, strong winds causing all kinds of problems up and down the I-95 corridor as far west as the Appalachians. And we're talking about rainfall, Gabe, in some spots up to 4 inches, and that could cause some flash flooding. So over the next 24 hours, Gabe, a real mess that we're going to have to just push through.
A messy weekend indeed. Al Roker, thank you. Now to those record high gas prices we're seeing across the country. But it's not just filling up that's costing more right now. Hotels and rental cars also skyrocketing in price. And just as air travel is nearing pre-pandemic levels, the cost of a plane ticket is expected to soar. Tom Costello has the latest.
For families leaving for spring break, prepare for the squeeze. Post-pandemic, the crowds are back, pushing prices higher, just as the Russian invasion has sent gas prices to record levels. A year ago, a 500-mile road trip would cost about $70 in gas. This year, it's averaging about $108, and much more in California.
Can you get me a loan?
It was over $50.
Rental cars averaging $80 more each day than last year. Hotels up 30% in a year. Meanwhile, domestic airfares are back to where they were before the pandemic, $300 on average. But with the cost of jet fuel also surging, summer airline tickets could get more expensive. So book now. Flying on June 1st, New York to Phoenix is averaging $270 now, Kansas City to Las Vegas $244. But European travel bookings have dropped as the war in Ukraine rages.
They are still interested in traveling. That demand hasn't disappeared. It's simply shifted back towards a bit closer in destinations.
Flying to London is now averaging $558 for June 1st. Madrid, $713. Paris, $828. Wherever you go, expect to pay more for entertainment and eating out.
I think a lot of people may opt for more of a staycation or more of a regional trip.
If you haven't booked your summer vacation yet, experts recommend comparison shopping starting right now. And second choice destinations and hotels may help you and the family save some money. Gabe?
Tom, thank you. Still ahead tonight, overdoses on spring break. Several West Point cadets hospitalized after coming in contact with fentanyl. Investigators believe 2 of them may have been exposed through CPR. Plus, the driver plowing through an outdoor dining area in D.C., what authorities say caused the deadly scene. And the new video showing armed robbers rushing into a home after a woman opened her front door for a man she thought was a candy vendor. Stay with us. We're back now with an alarming incident in Florida. 6 West Point students overdosing on fentanyl-laced cocaine while on spring break. Authorities say at least 2 overdosed after trying to resuscitate their friends. Kerry Sanders has that story.
Our NBC station in South Florida reporting that 2 West Point college students on spring break are in critical condition tonight. They're among 6 West Point cadets who authorities say all overdosed on cocaine laced with fentanyl.
This is extremely alarming to us. There were multiple people in cardiac arrests in the front yard.
Fentanyl is an opioid often added to drugs by street dealers to enhance a user's euphoria. Experts say it's impossible to look at powdered cocaine and see fentanyl. The only way to know it's there is to test it. The South Florida Sun-Sentinel newspaper is reporting tonight that the 6 West Point cadets who overdosed were football players. West Point, in a statement to NBC News, saying in part, the U.S. Military Academy is aware of the situation involving West Point cadets, which occurred Thursday night in Wilton Manors, Florida. The incident is currently under investigation.
These are healthy young adults, college students in the prime of their life.
The West Point students had rented an Airbnb in Wilton Manors near Fort Lauderdale. When paramedics arrived on scene Thursday evening, their first emergency treatment was to administer Narcan. Narcan often successfully counteracts fentanyl. Emergency room Dr. Joseph DeRazio at Temple Health in Philadelphia.
Fentanyl is very cheap to produce and distribute.
What happens to the person who has ingested fentanyl?
The fentanyl is an opioid. It's a very strong opioid. And in high doses, what it will do will slow down your breathing, or in extreme circumstances, stop breathing altogether.
Investigators say 2 cadets tell them they never used the drugs, but were instead exposed after performing CPR on their friends.
When they went down into cardiac arrest, 2 of their friends began doing CPR, and they were exposed from the direct contact of the fentanyl.
You would think that kids at West Point would know better.
People are dying from overdose deaths no matter what their background is, what their race is, what their economic status is. This is a nationwide problem.
And Carrie Sanders joins us now from Fort Lauderdale. Carrie, given what you reported in your story that 2 of the people who overdosed were just trying to administer CPR, it's just incredible. What kind of warning are police giving?
Well, it's really interesting because the expert we just heard from in Temple says casual contact does not necessarily result in an overdose. He has extensive experience in this, and so that story might be somewhat suspect. The local authorities are going to be investigating, and of course, on top of that, we now know the U.S. military is investigating to find out what really happened. At the end of the day, as we've noted here, a warning to everybody that you should just assume illegal drugs are laced with fentanyl, Gabe.
Carrie, thank you. Next tonight, a devious scheme caught on camera. A group of men, at least one of them armed, robbing a woman in her home in broad daylight after pretending to be candy vendors. Steve Patterson has the details.
Tonight, a home robbery in broad daylight caught on camera. In a video released by police, this man allegedly posed as a candy vendor before a team of thieves robs a woman's home in Northern California. The alleged victim is seen handing him a $5 bill in exchange for a box of candy. 3 masked men, at least one appearing to have a gun in hand, then rush into the woman's home. The candy vendor then puts on a ski mask. The whole exchange caught on a Ring doorbell camera. The Stockton Police Department says all 4 suspects are still at large. Neighbors tell our affiliate KCRA they saw the vendor going door to door moments before the alleged robbery under the guise of selling candy.
To be tricked is just, that makes my heart really sad.
It's just bad people doing bad things to people who are vulnerable.
Law enforcement experts say ruses like this are nothing new.
People have always come up with schemes and ways of trying to get into people's homes and steal things from them. We've had people who obviously go onto porches and take packages, pretend that they're there for something else and steal packages. And then we have people who pretend, give the illusion that they are there to deliver something, and in fact are there to force their way in.
Surveillance technology like Ring has captured countless home invasions on camera, all of these incidents happening within the past 4 months. Experts say surveillance technology is helpful, but more so after the crime has been committed.
It's hard to measure how many people didn't do something because they saw a camera there. But we have to know that seeing a camera there will dissuade some folks from committing an act. And then in terms of being able to follow up afterwards, having that on video is very helpful.
And Steve Patterson joins us now from Los Angeles. Steve, any progress on catching the suspects?
Gabe, you know, at this point, no arrests have been made just yet. The Stockton Police Department posted that video in hopes that someone will step forward. And police say they're thankful for the surveillance technology, especially in crimes like this. But it can only go so far without help from the public. Right now, there is a $10,000 reward for any information that leads to an arrest. Gabe?
Steve, thank you. When we come back, a wild scene in California. A man stealing a yacht and then crashing it into other boats. The charges and massive bail he's now facing. That's next. Back now with Top Stories news feed, and we begin with the deadly crash at a restaurant in D.C. Police say at least 2 people died and several others were hurt after an SUV plowed into an outdoor seating area this afternoon. At least 4 people are in critical condition. Investigators say it appears an elderly driver lost control of his car. So far, no charges have been filed. A man was arrested after stealing a 60-foot yacht in California. Video shows the man smashing the stolen boat into several others in Newport Beach. He was then doing donuts in the water and speeding before he was taken into custody. At least 1 person was injured. The suspect is being held on $3 million bail. A Division I college football player announced his retirement, citing mental health concerns. Ohio State offensive lineman Harry Miller posted a lengthy Twitter statement saying mental health struggles nearly drove him to suicide. The Buckeye also thanked his coach for his support. His announcement came less than 2 weeks after a Stanford goalkeeper took her own life. If you or someone you know is in crisis, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. That number is on your screen. And BMW is recalling nearly 1 million cars and SUVs, most for a 3rd time. The company says the engine can overheat and spark a fire. The recall includes older 3, 5, and 1 series, as well as X5, X3, and Z4 models from 2006 to 2013. Owners will be notified starting next month. Next tonight, breaking news out of Texas just moments before we came on the air. A district court judge temporarily halting enforcement of an order from the governor to investigate families of transgender youth. It comes after dozens of businesses published a letter blasting that order today. St. Clair Esamoah has the latest.
Breaking tonight, a major court ruling over transgender care in Texas. An Austin judge blocking the state from investigating gender-confirming care for transgender youth as child abuse, following a full-page ad blasting state leadership and a week of protest.
We're trying to be just people that are respected, that are treated with dignity.
All this after Republican Governor Greg Abbott allegedly directed his state to investigate families of youth who pursue what doctors call gender-affirming care, saying Texas law requires the Department of Family and Protective Services, or DFPS, quote, to investigate the parents of a child who is subjected to these abusive gender transitioning procedures. Now, a family is suing state officials, including Governor Abbott. During the day-long hearing on Friday, Judge Amy Clark Meacham heard from state attorneys and directly from the parents represented by the ACLU and Lambda Legal.
They cannot stand.
And major corporations are also speaking up, declaring alongside the Human Rights Commission, discrimination is bad for business in response to Governor Abbott's alleged directive. Prior to the ruling, one Texas lawyer not associated with either side said the decision would be consequential.
No other state in the union has criminal liability for this type of medical care, except for Arkansas.
But the effects of this climate already evident. Texas Children's Hospital halting hormone therapies earlier this week, leaving some Texas parents of transgender youth on edge.
We are facing the weight of the government trying to strip our children from loving homes. Not only families like mine, but families who have less access to resources.
Since the directive began, Texas DFPS says they've opened at least 9 investigations into, quote, gender transitioning procedures.
And St. Clair Esamoah joins us now live. St. Clair, this ruling just came down. It's a temporary injunction. Now, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has been very outspoken about this issue. What's next?
Yeah, that's right. What's next is likely a continued and ongoing legal battle. I cannot understate the backlash to the state's initial directive. Major businesses signed that letter we showed saying discrimination is bad for business. The White House even released a statement condemning the state's move. That said, we're seeing a lot of anti-trans legislation around the country, so this is likely not the last we've heard from Texas or other states. And I did reach out to the governor's office, Governor Abbott, for a reaction, but have not yet heard back. Gabe?
Sinclair, thank you. Today, the world marks a somber anniversary. Hard to believe, but 2 years ago, on this date, the WHO first declared COVID a pandemic. The U.S. and countries around the globe going into lockdown, attempting to stop the spread of a new and deadly virus. In the months and years since, roughly 80 million people have tested positive for COVID in this country, and nearly 1 million Americans have died. Countless families and lives forever changed. What began as a 14-day lockdown in the U.S. stretched into a year and then 2. But with new cases, hospitalizations, and deaths all dropping dramatically, there is hope we could be entering a new phase. Joining us now for a reality check on where we stand, NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel. Dr. Patel, we have spoken so many times over the last 2 years. It's hard to believe, as I said, that after 2 years, we're still dealing with COVID in this country. How optimistic are you that we're nearing the end of this pandemic?
Well, I'm optimistic, Gabe, that we're near the end of kind of this pandemic phase. Certainly not optimistic that it's soon. And I do think it's just worth reminding that much of the globe still has to be vaccinated. And in order to get technically out of this pandemic phase, Gabe, we need time and we need some predictability. That's when we'll move into something like the flu, where we know it starts around a certain time of the year. We have a vaccine that proves to be generally effective, and we can help protect generally most of the population. We still see death, we still see hospitalizations, but nowhere near to this magnitude. I am optimistic that if we can just move forward without another kind of Omicron, newer variant that escapes our current immunity, we will see the other side of this pandemic.
So, Dr. Patel, when you look back at the last 2 years, what did the U.S. get right? And where did public health officials fall short?
Yeah, look, I take responsibility for some of this too, Gabe, because in the beginning, there were many of us that knew this was an airborne or respiratory-based virus initially, and we were still being really cautious about masks because it's just not part of the U.S. culture. We were worried that we would take away from, healthcare personnel. Simply not true. We now know that we could have prevented so many infections and countless deaths if we had implemented masks earlier. So we could have done a better job. But let me just emphasize what we did get right. I can't stress enough how incredible the development of the COVID vaccines were and how that was a kind of an all-in-government approach to basically research funding, accelerating manufacturing, using the Defense Production Act. That was kind of not just American government functioning at its best, but science and technology across the world. And we really do have to stop and think about the fact that if we didn't have these vaccines, Gabe, we would be having a much different conversation and certainly not one that's optimistic.
It really is incredible how quickly those vaccines came together. And quickly, Dr. Patel, are we in a better position now to deal with future outbreaks, whether it be from a new variant or a new virus entirely?
Definitely better than 2 years ago. We've got a better genetic surveillance system. We have testing capacity. Gabe, we finally have those at-home tests we've been talking about for seems like years and years. Now we just need to make sure that we have adequate funding for stockpiles and some of the public health funding that we desperately needed 2 years ago. And we're falling short with some of the congressional withdrawal of funding, but I'm hopeful that this will come soon.
Dr. Patel, thank you. Now to top stories Global Watch and the killing of a mayor in one of Mexico's most violent states. Authorities say the mayor of Aguila was shot and killed while driving home from City Hall. The Mexican army had been called into the city last month after it fell under cartel control. ISIS has confirmed the death of its leader for the first time. The terror group did not say how he died, but the U.S. said he was killed during a special forces raid in northern Syria in February. ISIS also announced it has named a new leader, but gave little information on his identity. Thousands in Brazil are protesting bills threatening the Amazon rainforest. The set of bills supported by President Bolsonaro would allow mining on protected indigenous land. A vote is not expected before April. This legislation comes after deforestation in the Amazon reached a record high in January and February. And if it's Friday night, you know it's Dateline. Tonight, the mystery in paradise. A British woman disappearing from her boyfriend's yacht in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Tonight, Andrea Canning takes us inside the investigation that captivated the world.
Our story begins off the island of St. John. Spring break 2021. Tourists were traveling again. Every hotel was sold out. Every sailboat booked. Anchored just a short distance from shore was a 47-foot luxury catamaran called Siren Song. All was quiet on a warm, starry March night, when suddenly an unusual distress call came from the boat.
Our 911 dispatch got a call at approximately 2:35 a.m.
The call was made by the boat's captain, Ryan Bain. He said his British girlfriend and first mate, Sarm Heslop, was missing from the boat they'd been living and working on. Ryan said his boat alarm had woken him up.
There was an anchor alarm that alerted that the boat had shifted or moved.
Does Ryan have any idea where she could be, or does he have a hunch or a theory or anything?
He simply said maybe she could have fallen off the boat.
And Dateline's Andrea Canning joins us now with more. Andrea, did you talk to anyone who could shed some light on her boyfriend, the last person known to have seen her?
Ryan Bain is from Michigan, and yes, indeed, he was the last person known to have seen her. A woman from his past, from Michigan, reached out to the Virgin Islands police to say that she had some information that they would be very interested in. And it certainly shed some light on Ryan. And we reached out to her and ended up going to Florida to meet her. And she becomes a critical part of this Dateline hour, and is just a fascinating interview when you hear what she has to say about Ryan Bain.
Certainly. We look forward to watching that. And also, I'm curious, you've spoken to so many people involved in this investigation. So what surprised you most about this case?
I think what surprised me most is how you can just vanish like that. You know, one day she's living her life in the Virgin Islands, her best life, on a catamaran, cooking, and she's with her boyfriend. And then the next, she's just gone. We went out with the Coast Guard. They did aerial searches. They did boat searches. They said they would have seen a body if there was a body in the water, but nothing. And now a year has passed, and there has literally been no sightings of her.
Andrea Canning, thanks so much. And you can catch the full episode of Dateline tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern on the mothership, NBC.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.